This week on the Brody File, time for the Kansas two-step. Wrong video, not the dance. We're talking the political shuffle. One-on-one with Kansas Senator Pat Roberts. Control of the Senate hangs in the balance.
The vote for Pat Roberts is to go back to Washington and vote for a Republican majority that will kick Harry Reid out, and we'll get this country back.
And we're one-on-one with the embattled Republican Governor Sam Brownback out in Kansas. He is battling for conservative principles, but he says the liberal media is out to get him.
I think they so desperately want what's happening in this state to fail.
Plus, the stakes are high in North Dakota over a pro-life measure that would simply be game-changing.
We're 30 days out, give or take, and probably the most pivotal decision, not just for North Dakota on a life issue, but I think for the nation.
The Brody File, on the air across America. Let's go. And welcome everybody to the Brody File. We are glad you're with us. Look, the midterm elections are almost upon us. A lot of tight races around the country. This week, though, our focus is on Kansas. And by the way, look who we found. We found Senator Pat Roberts. There we are. Look, I shook his hand. He kicked off his bus tour around the state, the three-term senator, in a tough re-election battle against independent Greg Orman. Roberts tells us that his opponent is a liberal Democrat masquerading as an independent. This razor-tight battle, could determine the balance of power in the Senate. So here's a closer look as we travel to Wichita, Kansas.
Eradicate this man. Vote him out as fast as you can.
It's a race here in Kansas filled with energy. Opponents of Senator Pat Roberts want to see him go.
Go home.
We need a change. We need to break the gridlock in Washington.
Vote for Pat.
Meanwhile, Roberts supporters believe in the three-term senator.
Roberts.
The contest carries national implications. Republicans need to keep this seat for a chance at winning control of the U.S. Senate. It's something we discussed with Senator Roberts on his statewide bus tour.
The vote for Pat Roberts is to go back to Washington and vote for a Republican majority that will kick Harry Reid out, and we'll get this country back. The road to a Republican majority runs right through Kansas.
His opponent, Greg Orman, calls himself an independent, despite claims to the contrary. Political observers say it's working well so far.
Pat Roberts is having a hard time defining Orman as a Democrat. Orman has been pretty successful at staying above the fray.
He has also attracted voters dissatisfied with longtime politicians. Roberts tells CBN News his campaign will expose any secrets. Do you believe he's lying about this idea that he's an independent?
Not when we get through with him. This is a person who, by donation and by his stand on the issues, is a liberal Democrat.
Orman wouldn't respond to multiple requests for an interview.
Ted Cruz.
Meanwhile, Thursday in Wichita, Roberts brought in Tea Party hero Ted Cruz to rally the troops.
The 2 years I've served in the Senate over and over again on fight after fight for conservative principles, Pat Roberts has stood up and reported for duty.
Cruz's visit comes after a tough primary fight against the Tea Party candidate. That fight alienated some in the movement. Those are votes Roberts must have to win. How does it feel to be the Tea Party secret weapon for Pat Roberts?
Well, look, it is terrific to see the enthusiasm here. This race in Kansas, the stakes are high. I understand the state of Kansas that there was a hard-fought primary.
Sure.
And that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing in our democracy. But that primary's over.
I have talked to many of the Tea Party folks myself, listened to them. The Tea Party is extremely valuable to us. We used the term just a while ago, the prairie fire that, gets things going.
But the Tea Party dust-up isn't the only issue. Pat Roberts is a fourth-generation Kansan. As a matter of fact, he has a residence in Dodge City, Kansas. He's had it for about 4 decades or so. But he lists his principal residence in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and that has given his critics a chance to attack. What is your sense about those critics? I mean, they like to take shots at you to say, you're a Washington guy.
Listen, I've been border to border, corner to corner in this state. I've been in all 105 counties. Well, I just don't think that holds any water. Let me tell you something, we're going to win this race. We are going to win this race.
Control of the Senate very well may hang in the balance. I love how politicians do that. Hey, they do the. Anyhow, at the top of the show, we talked about the Kansas two-step. Well, part two has to do with the conservative Republican governor out in Kansas, Sam Brownback. He is in trouble, too. It really is hard to believe that a conservative governor in a conservative state is in trouble, but it's true. Brownback won the governorship 4 years ago by a whopping 30 points. But critics say his renegade tax-cutting policy has actually hurt the state economically. Of course, Brownback begs to differ and says the liberal media is out to get him. Here's a clip from our interview. There's good news from the Kansas economy standpoint, and then there's some bad news as well. There's always a kind of a mixed bag. It seems like the mainstream media, though, wants to take all of basically craft a narrative, if you will, with some of the negative news coming out of this state economically. Why do you think that is? What do you think's going on exactly? Is this kind of an out-to-get-you campaign because you're a conservative type guy?
I think they so desperately want what's happening in this state to fail that they're shopping for a factual setting to back that up because it's working. Now, what they will do is we've focused on growing private sector jobs, but we're down 3,000 positions as a state. The state of Kansas has 3,000 fewer positions, 3,000 fewer employees. So our public sector job numbers are down. But that's what we've been focusing on doing, because as we get that number down and more effective, we can pass that on in tax cuts to the people of Kansas. But the liberal media will say, oh, look at the overall job numbers. Well, but they won't look at private sector, which is what we're focusing on, is growing. And by the way, we're growing in the Kansas City area, the Kansas side, 3 times faster private sector jobs than the Missouri side. But public sector, we've been holding that down. Although teachers, we're up in teachers. We have funded more teachers. But I think the left is just so desperate to see, they want this model to fail so bad that they can't wait for it to, and they want to get me electorally before we get on through this and prove that this is working.
It's Governor Sam Brownback here on the Brody File. More on that interview, by the way, in a couple of weeks here on The Big Show. All right, time now for a narcissistic story because it has to do with, well, yours truly. The Brody File was on Meet the Press this past week. We were talking about, we all were talking about evangelicals and the culture war. Hey, that's the Brody File sweet spot. Here's a clip.
You've talked to the prominent members of the evangelical movement. They don't like the surrender that many prominent Republicans indicated this week, do they?
They don't like it at all. Look, politicians see it, many politicians see it as a political issue, gay marriage, that is. Mike Huckabee and others see it as a principle. And I think that's the difference. Is it a political issue for you, or is it a principle? There was a conservative author and historian, Russell Kirk, who used to say politicians are actors performing a script that is written by the audience. And look, the audience here are evangelical Christians who, let's face it, Chuck, are not voting. People say, wait, not voting? What are you talking about? 30 million evangelicals voted in 2012.
You still believe they're not voting?
Well, listen to this. 80 million. There are about 80 million evangelicals in this country. That puts 50 million evangelicals sitting on the sidelines.
That is a good point by that guy. Oh, always fun, by the way, to take the evangelical message into the liberal mainstream media den. But the Brody File has so much more to say on this topic. And so, move over, Meet the Press. It's time for the Brody File commentary. Meet the Press moderator, Chuck Todd, seemed miffed at the fact that I thought evangelicals weren't really voting on Election Day. I mean, after all, the mainstream media narrative is that evangelicals show up in droves at the ballot box. Well, look, folks, not true. As a matter of fact, not true at all. On the surface, it seems like evangelicals show up because they represented about 25% of all votes in the 2012 presidential election. But as I mentioned to Chuck Todd, that is 30 million evangelicals. And folks, newsflash, there are 80 million or so evangelicals in the country, so that's roughly 50 million that aren't voting. Now, I don't know if they're watching Charles Stanley, maybe they're playing Bible Trivia Pursuit, maybe they're simply eating Doritos on the couch, but they aren't showing up at the polls, and that is unacceptable. All right, when we come back, we head inside the human brain. Oh, ooh. A Christian doctor explores your God-given potential. Next. And welcome back to the Brody File, everybody. Well, look, I don't know about you, but I would love to know more about my brain. Of course, in my case, it may take only a few seconds, whatever. I still want to know. Well, look, a Christian doctor down in Texas is helping people find their God-given talent by studying their brains. Hey, by the way, the politicians up here in D.C. could use this guy. All right, the Brody File wants to bring in one of our new contributors to the show now, Angela Zatopek. She traveled down to Texas to talk with the good doctor. Angela, welcome to the Brody File.
What if you were given a blueprint of your mind with a map showing how you learn and what area you were built to excel in? Based off of multiple intelligence research by Harvard professor Howard Gardner, a new testing system has now been formed called the Innate Intellect Evaluation. Human behavior specialist Scott Black has studied Gardner's intelligence research and now helps others.
Here's how the process works. I capture your fingerprints. Within 24 to 36 hours, I have a 36-page report that not only identifies the 8 intellects identified by Dr. Howard Gardner, but also gives you exactly how that person processes. How do they take in information? Do they do it visually, auditorily, or kinesthetically?
This type of testing can also be a tool for parents to use by understanding how your child learns and what environments they flourish in. Then you can take that information and identify areas that might need extra attention or where the child excels. Our unique designs in our fingers are connected to specific lobes of the brain, determining how we learn and process information.
God made a mimeograph, a copy, a ditto. Each one of these prints on your finger is the exact map of the brain lobe that it's connected to. 5 fingers, 5 lobes.
Each lobe controls a specific type of learning skill. With my curiosity getting the best of me, I wanted to see exactly how my brain works and my learning style.
So Angela, great news. We got your report back. Our scientists sped it up. The bad news, it's much worse than we thought. Your visual lobes are off the chart. You have what's called a reflective thinking as well. How things look, colors, does it match? And then also the other side, visual identification, visual differentiation, observing things. Does this match? Does this fit? Is this right? Something doesn't look right here. You are gifted in both of those areas.
Currently, 2.4 million students are diagnosed with a learning disability. That makes up 41% of our student population. Through this new testing, Black says if you understand how the brain works, you can then remove the learning disability and simply find what is the child's learning style.
Think about our education system. You know we're falling behind. We're falling behind the math, the sciences, all that. So what are we doing wrong? The rest of the world is teaching the way people learn. We're working to get people out of the old way of thinking.
Be sure to let me know what your learning style is, because I'm curious, how does David Brody learn?
Oh, Angela, I will be sure to let you know. I can tell you right now it has to do with food and food only. Thank you. All right, when we come back, meet the woman who has scheduled her date with death and the woman who is trying to get her to change her mind. Both of those stories next. All right, welcome back. Time now for the story of Brittany Maynard. She is 29 years old. She's 29 years old. She's got terminal brain cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months to live, but she doesn't want to wait that long. So Brittany and her husband moved to Oregon to take advantage of the state's controversial Death with Dignity Act. That's the law that says doctors can prescribe a lethal dose of medication to terminally ill patients who want to die. Of course, it's also known as the assisted suicide law. Well, her emotional video explaining her decision has gone viral. Have a look.
I plan to be surrounded by my immediate family, which is my husband and my mother and my stepfather and my best friend, who's also a physician, and probably not much more people. And I will die upstairs in my bedroom that I share with my husband. I hope to enjoy however many days I have left on this beautiful earth and spend as much of it outside as I can, surrounded by those I love. I hope to pass in peace.
That's pretty gut-wrenching right there. You know, last week then, another woman came forward begging Brittany not to go through with her decision. Like Brittany, 36-year-old Kara Tippett is an author and a mother of 4, but she also has terminal cancer. So she says she has appealed to Brittany with a heart full of love and a message that with Jesus, death is no longer dying. Brody File producer Amber Strong spoke with Tippett about that message and her story.
Thank you very much for doing this for us, Karen, for taking the time to talk to us. One thing that stood out to me about your letter to Mrs. Maynard was that you were so gracious and thankful for her having the courage to share her story. And so I just want to thank you for being here and for sharing your story with the CBN News today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
For our viewers who are unfamiliar with your story, can you explain a little bit about your background?
2 years ago, at the age of 36, I was diagnosed with stage 2B breast cancer. I battled, I did chemo, mastectomy, radiation, and we were going for our final step in the fall of 2013 to get my ovaries removed because of my kind of cancer. And when we went in, we realized cancer had metastasized. And so since then, I've been battling stage 4 metastatic cancer. Cancer is now in my lymph system, in my bones, in my brain.
And you wrote this letter to Miss Maynard because obviously your situations are similar in a way, but I want to point something out. The way you wrote the letter was very, very gracious and in no way condemning Miss Maynard. What was your purpose behind the letter?
I just wanted her to know that her breath matters and that her life matters and that we see her and that she's important and that she's loved. And I wanted her to hear that she's loved, that her life matters, and that God loves her. Yeah. It doesn't lessen how hard it is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It's, you know, Brittany and I have been asked to receive a very hard story.
Thank you, Amber. Look, we all need to be praying for both of these women. Come on, Brody File audience, we can do this. All right. When we roll on from D.C., huge stakes for the pro-life movement as they battle Planned Parenthood in North Dakota. What it means for the entire country. We chat with pro-life advocate Yana Myrtle for her take. Stick around. We're back in a moment. And welcome back to the Brody File, everybody. All right, look, there's a huge pro-life battle going on out in North Dakota. This, folks, really is the true front lines of the pro-life war. It centers on something called Measure 1. It's going to be on the November ballot out there. It's a human life amendment, and the result will have huge ramifications in the battle over abortion in America. You know, recently, Yana Myrtle stopped by our comfy studios. She is the North Dakota State Director with Concerned Women for America. She's also heavily involved in the coalition group called ND Choose Life. So here is Yana Myrtle. Where are we exactly, or where are you guys exactly on the within the pro-life movement on this issue exactly?
You know, David, we're 30 days out, give or take, from probably the most pivotal decision, not just for North Dakota on a life issue, but I think for the nation. Measure 1 in North Dakota is on the ballot, put there by our legislators, and supported now by a group called ND Choose Life, which is a coalition, basically, of pro-life groups, which in itself is a miracle. Every pro-life group is part of this coalition to pass Measure 1. I happen to have the honor of chairing that in North Dakota, and it's pivotal to pass this, like I said, not just because of North Dakota laws and protect the integrity of our state authority to pass laws, but also for the nation to pass Measure 1, which is a human life amendment.
Help me out on the if not polling on this. What is your sense of where this is at?
You know, North Dakota, as probably your viewers know, has been very strong on the life issue. Right. And in order to kind of tell you where we're at, you almost have to back up, because most pro-lifers, even listening to this, when we talk abortion pro-life, we talk Roe versus Wade, right, in 1973. Well, we need to fast forward to 1992 when we had Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which is when the court revisited Roe versus Wade again and sort of cemented it, but also opened up a whole new thing called undue burden, which basically they told the states, you have some rights to protect life and potential life, right? And so we've done that. North Dakota, one of the leaders, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, I'm sure I'm forgetting some states, have really taken the reins and said, okay, we have rights in our state through our legislators to pass laws to protect life, common sense regulations and restrictions like parental notification, ultrasound bills, 20-week ban, which we have in North Dakota. Another thing that we've done in North Dakota, by the way, is ban on gender-based abortions and genetic abnormalities. And so North Dakotans overwhelmingly support this. So we are a strong pro-life state. Having said that, I think we're going to get into that. I'm sure Planned Parenthood and our opposition is coming in with tremendous amount of lies and emotional sort of pull like they do in every election and lots of money. And so we don't know. We have a good feeling about our campaign. We think our legislators did the right thing by putting this measure on the ballot to protect North Dakota laws. And so we're doing good.
Good luck to Yana Myrtle out there in North Dakota, and watch out, cold winter ahead. Oy gavolt. Oh, speaking of oy gavolt, back with the oy vey moment of the week. It's going to put you in a trance. All right, everybody, welcome back. Look, we know America's fighting to make sure Ebola doesn't become widespread in this country, but I really had no idea that we were also fighting against potential zombies. That's right. Time for our oy vey moment of the week. Folks, look, here it is, the Center for Disease Control website. This is the official government website. Look what we found. They're preparing Americans for a zombie attack. That's right, zombie preparedness. We think it's all in fun because the CDC talks about how this is a great way for people to get serious about preparing survival kits for any emergency. But then we read this, and it seemed like a serious line, quote, if zombies did start roaming the streets, CDC would conduct an investigation much like any other disease outbreak, including consultation, lab testing, and analysis. I mean, oy gavolt. And here's something called the Gov Girl getting her kit ready.
I have a couple things in my bag that the CDC doesn't recommend, but I think it's a good idea. Sunglasses to block out the harmful rays of the sun and to look cool. As well as, this is a good one, chapstick.
This story has me totally confused. I have no idea what's going on here. Anyhow, one hyphenated word, oy-gavolt. I don't know. That does it for us. God bless. Have a great week.